Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are December's sun sign horoscopes. You can actually read these for your sun sign or your moon sign. This is for Leo for the month of December 2018. And we're going to be taking a look at a few themes that are really dominant in the month of December for you. Most important is the sign of Sagittarius in your fifth whole sign house. Lots of planets moving through this house this month, making a square to Mars and Neptune in your eighth house. That's where the bulk of the planetary action lies this month. That's what we're going to focus on today. But the month begins right on the heels of a Venus-Uranus opposition from your third and ninth house, two houses that were associated with the mind, the intellect, faith, religion, and communicating, and also travel. Different kinds of travel, short travel, long travel, your neighborhood, long journeys abroad, local travel, and long pilgrimages. Okay, so Venus opposite Uranus across this axis suggests that your relationships have been going through something of a philosophical crisis or philosophical changes or disruptions. Sometimes that means that maybe you've been Leo's very strong, proud, right? It's hard to compromise sometimes when you feel strong and proud about something, especially when people betray you. Leos do not take betrayal well at all. And this Venus opposite Uranus dynamic can be about sudden breakdowns or changes or disruptions in different kinds of agreements or relationships that you have with other people. So be careful of just be aware of, I should say, that dynamic as the month begins. This is also about philosophical or spiritual or intellectual disruptions or differences or breakthroughs, creative breakthroughs, a breakthrough in learning something, your mind being changed radically by someone or some encounter in a relationship. So that can be a little intense, that dynamic, and that starts the month, right? So this may carry over into December a little bit. But then the big story again is all of these planets going through Sag, squaring these planets in Pisces. So what does that look like? All right, well, I'm going to go through it one day at a time and just show you. First 2 days of the month, you're going to see, for example, the Sun square to Mars in Pisces from the fifth house Sagittarius to eighth house Pisces. And then, look, you go to December 6th into the 7th, and you've got a new moon in Sagittarius square to Mars and Neptune in Pisces. So again, same two houses emphasized, same planets, Mars and Neptune emphasized. Go forward beyond that, and you get all the way up to like December, around December 21st. And then you've got Jupiter and Mercury conjoining in Sagittarius. What happens after that? On the 24th, you have Mercury in Sagittarius square to Neptune in Pisces. Again, same thing. So you can see the main point that I'm trying to make is that all month long, it's Sagittarius Pisces stuff. That's the main, that's where the action is this month. Okay, so what does that mean? Fifth house was traditionally called the joy of Venus. It was a place of benefits. It was a place of pleasure and happiness, recreation, taverns, restaurants, theater, play, having a beer with friends, whatever you do to have fun, going to the game or something like that. Or it was also places related to sexuality, children, procreation. This is the joy of Venus. This is her house. This is where she likes to hang out and have fun. It's a place of fantasy. It's also a place of good fortune. Okay, so in many ways, the action is there this month. It's a very creative month. It's about pleasure and fun and joy, etc. However, the eighth house was traditionally called the idle place in the gate of Hades, has a much more negative or difficult connotation, has more to do with twisted motives, fear, paranoia, worry about the future, death. It has a lot to do with benefits that come to us through life, through life's difficulties, like when someone dies and gives you money, an inheritance, or other things that we might come to in terms of luck or chance, but the circumstances surrounding what we receive are just difficult in some way. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means it might be a month to be watching, a little what do they call it? Like a dark comedies, right? Where there's an emphasis on things that are enjoyable or pleasurable, but also maybe a little dark. So sometimes people's fifth house, eighth house dynamics are about the kind of pleasure that you take. And sometimes this maybe also a month where you're basically realizing, hey, I'm doing something in the name of pleasure or fun or recreation. It's actually really unhealthy for me. And I'm starting to understand my own unconscious motivations for doing this. So there can be a real deep transformation around the pleasure principle when you have transits falling in these places. You also have to be careful because something that seems really fun could have really intense consequences, or there can be that kind of free-spirited rebelliousness where you're trying to get away with something and there are more difficult consequences than you anticipate. You can also really come into some good times or some good fortune and somehow it's involved with something a little heavy or dark. I'll give you an example, which is just that I was at a funeral last spring in the family, and even though it was obviously a really sad, mournful occasion, there was a lot of really joyful connections that I had with family at that. That was a fifth house, eighth house moment in my chart, transit-wise. It's a lot of joy. It was a lot of food. It was a lot of fun. And we were also coming together because of a death. It's a fifth house, eighth house kind of thing. Fifth house, eighth house connections can also be about the chances or sort of the gamble that you take, doing something risky and heavy that you might know to be wrong, but you're doing it just for the thrill of it. So be careful of those kinds of compulsions to act rebelliously that might lead to, destruction, especially sort of hedonistic forces in the fifth house. Now, the other thing is, of course, children and the topic of loss or fear or difficulties. So sometimes with these two, when these two places are combined, you're going to go through a period of time where your kids are, if you have kids, they might be going through a little rebellious phase, or you might be discovering that they did something bad. They stole some money or they cheated on a test or whatever. So any of that kind of shadowy, difficult stuff that can come up in the eighth house, also surrounding children, fifth house, eighth house dynamics. Sometimes your kid's sick and you're just sort of, you're doing one of those things as a parent where you just worry yourself sick. I have kids, so I've gone through fifth house, eighth house transits, and that's what it's been like. My daughter got her first fever that was really intense under a fifth house, eighth house dynamic. So that's what it's like. You're afraid that they're going to die. Did she die? No, but the fear of death is part of the eighth just as much as death. So those are the dynamics that are really pronounced this month for you. It's also a great time to go deep, to look at unconscious material, and to think about how your life can include more happiness or joy by transforming things, by letting go of things that maybe you're holding around in your life out of fear. So those are some things to think about. Now, there's one other transit on, if we go to about December 20th, you'll see the sun in Sagittarius will trine Uranus in the ninth house. This is a moment where you might have a kind of a intellectual or spiritual, creative kind of breakthrough or epiphany, really creative energy right around that time. And then you look at December 21st into the 22nd, sun's going into Capricorn in the 6th, the winter solstice. And then on the 22nd, moon will be full in Cancer in your 12th. This is 21st and 22nd are also foreshadowing events that will be happening for you next month when the first eclipses start happening in Cancer and Capricorn, changing out of your home sign, which frankly is nice. It was in Leo for a long time. But now shifting to Cancer in your 12th house, Capricorn in your 6th, this is going to be an interlude period for the next year and a half where there's a lot of hard inner work that's happening. The nodes in those houses suggest you might be interested in doing more compassionate, charitable, service-like work as well, because these are the places of suffering. But that doesn't necessarily mean you will suffer as much as it sometimes means that you just get a little bit more dialed into the reality of other people who are suffering in the world and maybe find some natural way of helping. Sometimes it's about periods of uncertainty or wandering or just feeling like you're in a liminal stage or sort of laboring to create some kind of change or transformation in your life, but it's just difficult. 6th house, 12th house periods are internal sort of work periods. The 12th house, for example, was traditionally associated with women in labor. So, you might be laboring with something creative, and that could be difficult, even if it's ultimately rewarding. Hard work periods come with 6th house, 12th house eclipses. We're going to talk more about that in your horoscope next month. So this is just a little foreshadow. Again, the winter solstice on the 21st, the full moon on the 22nd, sun and moon moving into your 6th and 12th, foreshadowing the work to come in the eclipse next month. So that's what I've got for you. I hope that this was interesting. Next time I see you, it'll be a new year. So I hope you have very happy holidays, Leos, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.